Startups and companies fail all the time, and a question I get frequently is, how can you really know why they failed? Root cause analysis can be a really good way to peel back the layers of the onion as you try to figure out what really went wrong. In this video, I'll walk through 3 frameworks that can help to get to the root cause of why a startup failed. You'll want to stay to the end to hear an example as I try to apply some of these frameworks to the recent collapse of WeWork. Let's get into it. Here's the first framework, written about by James Currier in NFX. The square represents the people that are involved in the process, and the diamond represents the opportunity itself. Let's look a little closer. Within this square, we start out with the founders. Who are the founders, and what is it that really has brought them into the business? Do they have a lot of experience in the business from previous jobs or work or businesses that they've done in that area? Do they have a really strong interest and enthusiasm, but relatively new to the scene? Are they an innovator in terms of business models or approaches and bringing in a lot of the subject matter expertise related to the business? Or do they have a lot of their own capital that they're willing to put into a business they don't know a lot about? All of these can be factors in terms of how successful they can be as a founder, and not just any founder, but the founder of this particular business. The second is the rest of the team. Some founders will bring in exceptional experts and experienced professionals in each area of the business and surround themselves with people who know a lot about the parts of the business that they don't. And this can be a very effective way for a founder to be successful in an industry, maybe if they don't have a lot of experience in it. However, some founders prefer to do everything themselves. Or they'll bring in a team, but they'll bring in those that are really loyal to them to the point that they won't challenge the founder when maybe some of the decisions they're making don't make sense or maybe don't match up with the data or other experiences that some of them have in the industry. And this can lead to groupthink. The third is outside investors. Where are the investment dollars coming from? Some founders will take money from anyone who's willing to write them a check, and they'll really draw in the kind of investors that are willing to speculate maybe in a business they don't understand, or maybe their investment is in the individual, but not a lot of connection once the check is written from the investor. Other founders will seek out investors that have a strategic connection to the business, and they'll look for those that are not only going to write a check and bring investment capital into the equation, but also bring their network, bring their expertise, their advice, and other infrastructure that can help the business to succeed. Fourth is strategic partners. These are going to be the companies and entities, individuals and groups that can help the founder to be successful, or that may lead the founder in the wrong direction. Choosing the right strategic partners that have a vested interest in the success of the business, but also can help facilitate the business, can be just as powerful as having an investor who has these same kind of connections and knowledge as well. So let's look at the diamond, the opportunity, the customer value proposition. Time and time again, businesses fail because they didn't really understand the value they were bringing to their customers. Blockbuster is a great example of a company that felt like they were bringing DVD rentals to people that wanted to watch movies at home. And they thought they were in the video rental business, when in fact they were in the instant entertainment business. And soon they were taken over by companies like Netflix and Redbox and others that streaming services that could deliver that same value either more cheaply or more directly without the need for what they did. So this is where the customer value proposition has to be very clear, and it has to be relevant, particularly for businesses that, maybe are in industries that are being disrupted. The second opportunity side of this is the go-to-market strategy. It may be that there's a good solution and a good customer value proposition, but the way it's brought to market isn't right. And so therefore, knowing exactly how you're going to deliver value to the customers, how you're going to reach those customers, the channels you're going to reach them through, and what the money model is, how you're going to monetize. These are all aspects of the go-to-market strategy. And if this isn't done correctly, this can really undermine even a very effective product or service offering. Third, technology and operations. Companies that don't have a strong operational component may find that they aren't able to grow past the original success that they have with an idea. So they may have found the right customers, they may have brought a solution and a business model that really seems to work, but they aren't able to scale because they don't have the operational capacity or infrastructure to make it work on a larger scale. Number 4 is the cash flow formula. It seems obvious enough, but there has to be more money coming in than going out. Maybe not at first. Every company has a period of time where they're burning cash. So you have that burn rate happening. But if they aren't able to get to where there's enough revenue coming in before they run out of runway, they're going to have to go back for more investment capital. And the founders, the owners start to lose their share of ownership and their control over the business as a result. So these are just examples of the opportunity side. The square and the diamond framework allows us to look at the root causes from different perspectives and different dimensions of what caused a startup to fail. The second framework is from visual paradigm, and this is the tree root cause analysis. And so we have the metaphor of a tree, and then we move to the foundation, the roots of the tree, and what the problem could be. So we see the symptoms, and we're wondering what is it that's causing that. So we ask why. Why are those symptoms of failure starting to present themselves? And asking the question why should point us to what is the problem, or at least the first problem that exists. And by asking why, again, 4 more times, you are able to dig in even further. Why is that root problem existing? Well, why is that cause happening? Why is that cause happening again? And further and further. And in particular, with this framework, we look at 4 areas. The first is the people. So the people involved, the founder and the team, very much like the square and diamond framework. Also the timing. Is it a good idea, the right customer, the right team, but is the timing wrong for some reason? Next would be the plan. So is the plan right? So was the execution effective? Very similar to the go-to-market plan or the strategy in the other framework is, did the right team have the right timing, the right product, the right customer, the right value proposition, but the plan just wasn't thorough enough, wasn't effective enough to get to market fast enough to beat out competition and to gain a stronghold. And finally, the idea itself. Was the idea really not the right idea? Did they identify the right problem, but then come with an idea to fix that problem that wasn't ideal and ultimately could be sustained over time? And so with this framework, we start to ask the question why over and over and again to get to the root of what the problem is. And the framework really emphasizes the people, the timing, the plan, and the idea. The third framework is often called the fish diagram. It's another way to ask the 5 whys, and it's often applied to quality management. The problem, the effect of what's going on is visible to everyone, but underneath the surface, there are different causes to this, and getting to the root, it's very helpful to ask the 5 whys. And there's lots of different areas that this framework points to for asking those questions. Things like measurements, methods, materials, personnel, the environment, machines. Digging into each of these areas can help, and asking those 5 whys goes deeper and deeper into what is underlying the problem that is visible. And if the underlying causes are not addressed, it's likely that the problem will persist and get bigger as the business tries to grow, and eventually it can all collapse under its own weight. So there are 3 frameworks that you can use to analyze what the root causes of a failure are for any kind of startup or business. What I want to do now is present an example. The example I'm going to use is WeWork. The company just filed for bankruptcy in 2023 after trying to make a run, but there really were a lot of problems that existed from very early on in the inception of this business, and we could use each of these 3 frameworks to analyze this. I'm not going to do this in detail, but I'll just use this as an example as we look at the frameworks of how they would be applied when you're trying to understand the root cause of a failed business or failed startup. So if we were going to apply the square and the diamond, we might look at the founders. Adam Neumann was a very charismatic individual with a compelling vision that drew a lot of interest from a lot of people. And it seemed to work very well on a small scale. But that charisma and that intensity often caused people to just follow where he was leading, even if the data and some of the circumstances suggested that maybe it wasn't the right path. Similarly, the team that Neumann brought around him tended to just move things ahead along the path he was leading, whether they seemed like the right path or not. And ultimately, a toxic culture emerged that was very unhealthy for many, many reasons, that many criticized Neumann for creating this culture and for allowing this culture to exist. In terms of investors, Neumann drew investors who were willing to be very aggressive and take big risks. Companies like SoftBank and Benchmark were willing to go along with a lot of exuberance over what was possible. But even as time went on, they started to pull back in their support of Neumann and ultimately removed him from leadership. Partners, including development and real estate companies, were very eager to work with WeWork because of how quickly they were growing and how much space they wanted to consume. But at the same time, they were really taking top dollar in these leases and looking for long-term leases that made it very difficult for WeWork to be profitable, even though they were growing so rapidly. The customer value proposition was often confusing with WeWork. While they were ultimately creating shared workspaces, they would position themselves as a technology company. And it wasn't clear whether the customers really understood that value proposition, and that was really what was driving their success. The go-to-market approach was all about growth. Find new spaces, secure leases, build them out, and start to get people working in the shared workspaces. And so there was a lot of hype and there was a lot of marketing, but there was an enormous amount of money that had to go into making this work and to continue the growth at a pace that would continue to keep investors and potentially customers and partners excited about the process along the way. Technology and operations also was a challenge because as they grew, they had to replicate the same process over and over and over again and had to have all the infrastructure in place to do that. But the real challenge was the cash flow formula. There really wasn't a good way to get profitable because there was such a high cost to every piece of the architecture that by the time revenue started coming in, it was very difficult to backfill all the costs that had gone in and even to keep the cash flow positive going forward. So as we can see with this one framework, you can start to look at the factors that led to the failure of the organization. And you can see many of these markers were present even from the very beginning with this example. The tree example can apply very much the same way. If the symptom was that the company was losing money all the time, then, what is the problem? Well, the problem, there's not enough cash coming in to cover the cash going out. And so you have a cash flow model problem. And so the cash flow formula is not working out right. And so, the symptom is the company's losing money. The problem is that the revenue coming in doesn't cover the costs. Well, why is that? Well, the leases were very expensive. And so therefore a lot of money was going out. Well, why was that? Well, because they were acquired, those leases were acquired very quickly, and often the terms of the deal and the costs were not aligned with what the business could support. And on and on, you can follow that thread. On the revenue side, it's the need for workspace, for shared workspace, and to be able to bring people in to start to use this space. Well, the environment changed. During COVID, there wasn't as much call for, or there wasn't as much utilization of shared workspace. And this, contributed to what was already a difficult problem. So as you can see here, any of these areas, you can start to ask why. Was the timing right? Were the people right? Was the plan right? Was the idea right? Very interesting idea, but was it really an idea that had a value prop that could support itself? So the final framework, if we were to apply it here, the FISH framework, we'd really go back and look at things like, are we measuring the right things? Measurements in this case were all about how many square feet of space can we make available for a shared workspace? How many people can we get to sign up to use the workspace? How fast can we saturate a particular market or a country or a continent? So the focus on measurements distracted from the fact that some of the fundamentals of the business were not working well. So again, we could follow each one of these frameworks more thoroughly, but you get the idea that these are ways to start to ask the question, if something is going wrong, why is it going wrong? If there's a problem in the business, why is that? What is the underlying problem? What are the causes of that problem? What are the root causes? What are really at the very root of the problem? And so if you want to understand why a business failed, these are just some ways that you can go about breaking that down and learning about why the business failed. If you want to learn more about why startups fail, check out my video, The 5 Brutal Mistakes That Will Lead to Startup Fails in 2024. Keep going.